Okay, thank you for that, Ian. The Estelle Gold Project, where Nova is developing North America's next major gold trend. And trend is really the operative word here, as we'll see with the scale of this project. It's not just one deposit. There's numerous opportunities for gold and other elements across the property. Of course, we've been focused on the gold. However, as you'll see, we also have multi-element opportunities, most recently antimony, as well as gold or silver and copper at some of the other prospects that we'll go through in detail today. Disclaimer for forward-looking statements. Please read at your leisure. Before I start going into the project, I just wanted to take a moment to look at some of the really significant achievements, how far we've come in just less than 5 years. In less than 5 years, we've taken a greenfields project and we've now defined almost 10 million ounces of gold in a district scale play. These ounces come from, of course, two deposits: Corbell up in the north, bulk tonnage, one of the largest bulk tonnage deposits in the world with 8 million ounces, and then RPM down south, which has really become the jewel in the crown with that very high grade core. In between, 20 other known prospects at various stages of advancements with exciting gold, silver, copper, and antimony showings. We've drilled almost 90,000 meters to date with just world-class results at both Corbell in terms of the size of that deposit, and at RPM with just exceptional record-breaking results by any measure. We've established a camp, a fully winterized 80-person camp with all the facilities. That's a big one. You know, that has enabled us, we committed early on to that has enabled us to operate at a very low cost, not having to mobilize and demobilize every year. We've completed 2 robust economic studies, scoping studies to date. The first, of course, was just looking at Corbell alone, and then the second looking at both Corbell and RPM at the scoping level. Now, as part of those studies, we've proven the flow sheet. We've proven that we can economically produce gold at the Estelle Gold Project. And now we're moving into the PFS level studies, and we expect the scoping study to only show improvements as we move forward with further refinements and test work. We've built strong relationships across the spectrum politically with the local government here and our local departments in terms of operating permits and laying the groundwork for future permitting. The governor has been to site, very supportive of the project. We've also built a lot of relationships across the finance and investment community. We have funders along the way. Raising capital has never been a problem for us, and we don't foresee that in the future. Of course, we're very cognizant about shareholder dilution. And so one of the ones I'll point out there is, if you recall, in the past, we've tapped into some of our strategic investments like Snow Lake Resources in the past to fund ourselves. So shareholder dilution is first and foremost on our mind with any capital raisings in the future. Now let's look at the project. It's in the Tintina Gold Province in Alaska. This has been one of the most prolific belts in recent decades, over 200 million ounces of documented resources in exploration, advanced exploration, as well as operating mines. It's the land of the intrusive related gold system. The type deposit for these intrusive related gold systems would be Kinross Fort Knox. This mine has been operating for almost 30 years now. Another direct analog to what we're doing at Estelle is the Victoria Gold Dublin Gulch project on the Yukon side. That project is all heap leach. At Fort Knox, they heap leach and they also process through a processing plant. But you can see, if you want a direct comparison of what we're trying to achieve here at Estelle, I urge the shareholders to look at those 2 projects in particular, Kinross Fort Knox and Victoria Gold Dublin Gulch. Technically, geologically, very similar. But you can see that 10 million plus ounce deposits are not uncommon in our neighborhood, and that's certainly what we're onto at Estelle, that just sits on the southern end of that belt there. Now, zooming right in to the project, here we are looking south, looking down to the south, project to the west. Infrastructure, always so important with these projects. In terms of power, we have a number of options there. The blue line you see there is the proposed gas pipeline for the Donlin project. That's the Barrick Nova Gold project, 45 million ounces resources just to the west of us. That proposed pipeline will pass about 10 miles to the north of our project. Potential offtake opportunities there for gas. We've also more recently been looking at running a transmission line straight to the Beluga power plant, which is the main power source that feeds into Anchorage and the Valley, which is the main population center here in Alaska, just 100 miles away from the project site. Also, we've been looking at micronuclear reactors. The state has really encouraged that. Big push in Alaska for these micronuclear reactors. We've been talking to Westinghouse and Nano Nuclear Company that are looking to bring these into Alaska. All the native remote Alaskan villages are clamoring for these micronuclear reactors to get away from the diesel generators. The first one is set to go into Alaska in 2025 up north. Us talking to some of these companies that do these micronuclear reactors, the technology is there. I mean, they've been putting them on nuclear submarines and such for decades and decades. And so it's a regulatory issue at this stage. But those are coming online very, very fast, and we're looking at that as an option. And of course, there's always the diesel generator option. Caterpillar and some of these other companies make very efficient, very clean diesel power generators these days as well. So number of options there. We'll of course choose what fits our timeline and our needs to the best. Let's talk about access.
Just on that slide, it's a good slide to show that all that is state land. If you want to touch on that.
That's correct. Good point, Louis. So yeah, we are all on state land. To put that into context, in Alaska, you have three types of land claims. You know, roughly, there are some subdivisions, but you have federal land, native corporation land, and state land. The best, most easy to operate land is state land. Just to give you an idea, in terms of native title, there's no native title as such in Alaska as it is in Australia or Canada. That was all sorted out in the 60s with the Native Corporation Land Act. And so, but nevertheless, we have no native corporation land or federal lands to contend with here. It's all on state land. What that means in terms of just day-to-day operating is it's a very pleasant environment, very supportive state government. We deal with state entities only, state departments, Department of Natural Resources, Department of Environment, and Alaska being a resource economy, they've been very supportive and they're really pushing this project. Also, when it comes to permitting, when we get to that stage, it'll be a much more streamlined process dealing with state agencies as opposed to federal government agencies. So that's a good point, Lou. Thanks for pointing that out. In terms of access, so at the site, we have a 4,000 foot plus airstrip where you can bring in very large aircraft like the DC-3. And we're also looking to expand that. With some slight expansion, we can bring in DC-4 aircraft. The difference there is currently we can bring in 1,000 gallons of fuel per flight. With the DC-4, you can bring in 3,000 gallons of fuel per flight. And that requires just a short improvement to the airstrip, extension to the airstrip. The pink line is our winter road. That's our snow road. Very common in this part of the world. The most recent project, which is utilizing a winter road for construction and operating way up north in Nunavut province in Canada, that's the Sabina project. And so that is an option for us in terms of constructing and operating a mine. However, we're becoming very encouraged and excited about the red line. The red line is the West Susitna Access Road project. Now, this project is gaining major momentum. It's a state-funded project. It's currently going through EIS. The first part of the road from Port Mackenzie, which is the deep water port for Anchorage here, along that route across the Susitna River to about this point is currently now in the DOT, the Department of Transportation STIP, State Transportation Infrastructure 5-year plan. So that funding and that part of the road is in the STIP, soon to be approved. Many other projects in that STIP as well, soon to be approved. And so that looks very encouraging that part will be built through DOT, through the Department of Transportation. The remainder part of the road, industrial access road, out to the terminus, the Estelle Gold project, and other projects. Of course, we're only one of many beneficiaries. The whole West Susitna Mining District, to access these resources, is being led out. That approval process is being led out by ADIA, the Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority. They do all the public-private partnerships for all these projects in Alaska. I'll name a few: the Red Dog zinc mine, port and access road, the current Ambler Road to access resources up north in Alaska. So that's being run out there. The overall project schedule is to break ground on this road in 2025. That's the current schedule, in 2025, and to have it completely open for business by 2028. Now, we only require a frontier road. When I say completely open for business, I'm speaking of concentrate haulage, coal haulage, these type of things, of course, which we don't require. We require just a simple access road for construction, and then we produce the doré bars with the current project. So that's the West Susitna access road. Moving right along, zooming into the project now, looking north, you can see our direct neighbor is U.S. Gold Mining's Whistler project, a recent successful IPO on the NASDAQ. Their deposits are mainly after porphyry copper gold systems. And so our geology is like geology, similar geology, and we also have porphyry copper gold targets across the Estelle project as well. One of them being West Wing here. Also, here's the Whistler project. This ridge here where we found recently discovered stibium, antimony gold project. This ridge here has very similar geology to Whistler. So porphyry copper gold is also potential on our site to note. Now let's move into the south area and look at the deposits. At RPM, relatively recent discovery. We've been working on this for 2 years now. At RPM, here's the drilling. RPM North, some of the drilling results. Spectacular, absolutely spectacular, world-class results. 400 meters at 3.5 grams per ton, including 132 meters at 10.1 grams per ton. We've all seen these numbers. It never gets boring to repeat them. Exciting. 258 meters here, 258 meters at 5.1 grams per ton, including 117 meters at 11.1 grams per ton. I could go on and on. It was, we drilled this now, very dense space drilling, and the results were repeated over and over. That's a very high grade starter core zone there, which we continue to work on. It remains open. At RPM South here, this zone here, a new zone recently discovered. Also exciting results. Very thick intercepts. You can see here, 333 meters at 0.9 grams per ton from the surface. All of these deposits on the surface. That's certainly economic material, including in that 94 meters at a gram. You can see here more thick intercepts, 344 meters at half a gram, and included in that a couple of intercepts of almost 40 meters at a gram. Certainly we haven't hit the very high grade bonanza material that we have at RPM North yet. However, that zone remains open, and we continue to look for that. But let's focus on that RPM North, really exciting RPM North bonanza, high grade bonanza zone, that core. So what you see here is a cross section looking west, and with the 1 gram per ton cutoff grade shell. And even at that very high cutoff, you can see that zone, that high grade bonanza zone, still hangs together very nicely, very continuous, very thick, very broad zone. From that drilling pad up there, we've also drilled some holes deeper down into the valley. So it's not that it's coming from the ridge down into the valley, not that deep under the surface out there in the valley. And what we see there is another 1 gram per ton zone starting to take shape in the valley. Very exciting. If I put on the 0.3 gram per ton grade shell, now it really starts to bulk out. For those interested in geology, you can see here some of the rocks in the core. It's the lighter colored, the white rocks that you see in those images that we're after. That's the intrusive. That's the mineralized intrusive. In general, more often than not, the darker rocks are the hornfells, the country rock. That tends to be barren. However, around the Bonanza zone, we do see mineralization, a thin skin of mineralization into that hornfells a little bit. But 99% of the time, the hornfells is barren, and it's the intrusive, the lighter color rocks that is mineralized. So it's very visual and very easy to identify, which is great when you're drilling to identify that you're hitting something. But when it comes to mining, it'll be very, very visual to minimize dilution and things like this. Now, spinning around, these are our pit shells from our scoping study that were generated, and of course, they drive down on those grade zones. Here we're looking at the resource classification. Of course, the measured portion where we have that dense drilling, the measured and indicated portions of the resource focused in that RPM North Bonanza zone. And then the remainder of the deposit remains inferred. So lots of work to do there remaining to prove up these resources and expand them. One of the things to do that, this year's drilling, if you look at the drill traces, the lighter colored gray traces are last year's and previous year's drillings. The black traces are the drilling that we completed this year. And so with the drilling that we've completed this year, we've been focused on looking up dip of the Bonanza zone here to continue to prove up and expand the up dip portion of that Bonanza zone. We've drilled some holes down dip here. You can kind of see one of them showing through there, down dip. And I believe we've seen some of the rocks there. I believe we may have intersected a down dip ore shoot at depth. So there's potential upside there. We've drilled some holes to the west, fanned out to the west, these 2 holes here. We have closed it off to the west, the Bonanza zone. However, to the east, it remains wide open. So that's very exciting. And then our drilling this year has also been focused on RPM Valley down here to continue to prove up and start to follow up some of those deeper drill holes we had last year there. That's where potential resource upside. And then RPM South up here, we have drilled some holes in this direction mainly to look between this link zone between RPM Valley and RPM South. All of our drilling is the highest quality HQ-oriented diamond core. And all the geological information from that core shows, all indications is that these 2 are linked. There's a massive intrusive in here linking these 2, and the resource upside for RPM, for massive amounts of volume, is here between RPM Valley and RPM South. And that's why that's our target intrusive, 600 meters of potential resource upside. You can see in these drill results that we've drilled into the valley, just clipping the northern nose of that target intrusive, 76 meters at 1.2 grams per ton. Here, 103 meters at 1 grams per ton, including 30 meters at 2 grams per ton. So it's there, it's mineralized. And our current thinking in terms of the geological interpretation is you have RPM North here, you have RPM North here, this zone, you have the Valley zone here, and you have RPM South. These 2 are linked. And what is happening here is there's a fault ripping right through here. And it's moved this RPM North Bonanza zone and offset it from the main intrusive, which sits here, the main intrusive. And so the resource upside potential is here. And so with that type of a model, this is a 1 kilometer strike length deposit remains wide open remains open to infill drill and continue to prove up the resources and increase the resource as we move forward. And so it's quite a sizable deposit, but potential multi-million ounces here remaining with further drill programs. Okay, so that's RPM. Now let's move a short distance to the north and one of our exciting exploration targets here in the Train area. And at Train, now we're looking north. And at Train, you know, this is the Train area. Some of these prospects drive me crazy sometimes. It's really, we reported several prospects in this area. You know, you have the Train area proper here. Then you have Trumpet out here. Then you have the Shoeshine area here. You have Shadow, Discovery, and then Muddy Creek in the back here. It's really all part of the same system, another massive intrusive related gold system here at Train. At Train, prospect proper, you can see rock chips up to 80 grams per ton, 20s, 30s, 40s, very consistent, very widespread across Train, even seeing some antimony showings there. And we'll go into a bit more depth about that later. At Trumpet, look at some of the results here, up to 132 grams per ton at Trumpet. You know, numerous high-grade gold samples here. What's really exciting at Trumpet is that we're not only seeing the gold, we're also seeing high-grade copper, 6.6%, 2.3%, 6.7%, 1.7%. High-grade silver, up to 1,945 grams per ton silver, many over 200, many over 500 grams per ton. And also antimony, very good antimony, 0.1% antimony consistently. And just to put it in perspective, 0.1% antimony, when you have an economic gold deposit, anything over 0.1% antimony, 1,000 ppm, has significant potential to provide byproduct credits. Byproduct credits. And so you can see even here, 3.8% antimony. So potential polymetallic system there at Trumpet. Over here at Shoeshine, this is where we received one of our highest grade rock chip samples anywhere on the site, 1,290 grams per ton. Very exciting. And other high grade samples there as well, 96 grams per ton. Good silver showing up there as well, 500, 100, and some antimony and copper. Here at Shadow, more of the same, high grade gold rock chips up to 44 grams per ton. And then I didn't mention much because we haven't released any numbers, still waiting for some samples there. But there's, of course, Muddy Creek, which is very exciting. And I'll leave that up to yourselves, but you can see it's very hot there, very hot there. What is our first target in this Train area? Our first target is between Train and Trumpet. We have a target intrusive there. It's a 1.5 kilometer strike length. And what we see, this photo on the right-hand side, this is what we see. Thick, high-grade sheeted veins ripping through that area. And so that's our main target, next drill target, to establish a third resource at the Estelle project to add to our resources at RPM and Corbel. So we're very excited about that. And we think this is where we're going to be able to find that third resource. Okay, zooming out, that's the south area. Now, what we'll be doing is we'll be flying along our proposed haul road system, proposed road network. And we've done the high level surveys for this. These are all suitable sites. And we hope to break ground on that, hopefully next year, start breaking ground on that. Flying up north, down the Squentina Valley, past our 80-man camp, all the processing facilities there, year-round, prep lab on site, and up to Corbel here. Okay, so at Corbel, we have numerous prospects and anomalies we've been working on and developed through the years, but I really want to focus on the black dots. This is where we have our resources. Corbel, Maine, absolutely massive deposit, bulk tonnage, 2.5 kilometer strike length. The geometry of the deposit lends itself to a very low strip ratio, which is an important aspect to look at when looking at the economics of a project. In the early years, the strip ratio is less than 1 to 1. So almost everything you dig up is some kind of pay dirt. Now, it's overall lower grade. So the average grade of the deposit is 0.3 grams per ton. However, internal, there is a higher grade feeder structure. What do I mean by that? I mean by that, these results here on the bottom, 101 grams at 1.3 grams per ton, including 30 meters at 2.4 grams per ton. 113 meters at 1 gram per ton, including 21 meters at 2.5 grams per ton, 94 meters at 1 gram. Those are within, of course, the broader bulk zone of, just massive thicknesses. 429 meters at 0.6 grams per ton, 308 meters at 0.7 grams per ton. But that higher grade feeder core is important to note. If I put on the 0.5 gram per ton grade shell, this encompasses that higher grade feeder core through the center of the deposit, very continuous there. And then if I put on the 0.3 gram per ton grade shell, it really starts to bulk out. So what's our plan there? Our plan there is here's the higher grade feeder core sitting here. And so that'll be direct mill feed straight to the core. And then this lower grade material, you have to understand this ore body. What you have here at Korbel are sheeted veins, very consistent orientation. It's not even stock worked or complex, very consistent orientation, very continuous. These veins can run our millimeter hairline fracture to we've seen them up to a meter thick. They tend to be between 1 to 3 centimeters thick, very continuous. We can follow them over hundreds of meters, even these smaller centimeter scale veins. When we selectively sample those veins, they're running ounces per ton. And so it's not a grade issue alone per se here at Korbel. It's a vein density is less out here in this bulk material. And so we intend, through our test work, it has shown that we can use ore sorting. Through TOMRA, density ore sorting works exceptionally well. Our test work has shown that we can take 0.3, 0.4 gram material and upgrade it up to 6 grams per ton, separating out those high-grade veins. And so that's our intention there. And we'll elaborate a bit more on that here in a bit when we talk about the process. Resource classification. Most of the in-pit resources there are indicated status. Of course, we were working on this years before we even found RPM. So mostly indicated, also some inferred, some upside remains there around the edges, and particular up north here along strike. This is the Isabella target, geophysical and sampling target up here. So upside remains there at Korbel. And then throughout the Korbel Valley, of course, Cathedral here. This was our maiden drilling program, first drilling program last year at Cathedral. And it was a good start. At a minimum, we see another Korbel main deposit starting to develop here. Very thick intercepts, no super high grade intersected yet. However, it requires follow-up because it's still an inferred resource. And what are we following up there? We're following up these rock chips. And back to my point of ore sorting in some of these very high grade veins, you can see from these results, some of these samples are taken from those high grade veins. And this is what we're separating out with the ore sorting: 114 grams per ton, 98 grams per ton. That's what the ore sorting is separating out. That's what we're after there. So at a minimum, Cathedral, another Korbel main. This Korbel Valley is over 1 billion tons of resource. Absolutely, it's just a massive system. But let's talk about the processing now. So down here, this is our site layout from our scoping study, a suitable site surveyed there. Right next to the pit, another important aspect to look at: short haul when it comes to mining, come out of the pit and straight into the process. Here's the flow sheet that we've developed from our metallurgical test work in the scoping study. And there's nothing fancy going on here. What we found is the gold, it's particulate gold, very easily liberated. And we can utilize off-the-shelf conventional technology. What we do is we crush, we mill, and then we go through a concentration step through the flotation. Then that concentrate, we regrind that down to 22 microns. So that's still quite coarse. It doesn't require ultra fine grind or anything like that. Through 22 microns, we then take that and we leach it and we've seen over 96% recovery in the leach, which this is scoping level test work. Now we're moving on to PFS for that next level test work to find improvements. And we're working with Metz Engineering, metallurgical and processing geniuses, really. And they've already seen in the test work that we have numerous areas where we can make improvements. So much low-hanging fruit here to make improvements to this flow sheet and our recoveries. And so there's lots of work to do on that with Metz, and that's upcoming here in 2024, some of those results. So that's how we'll process RPM as well as that higher grade material like Corbel. Then later on in the mine life, at the end of the project, we will employ the ore sorters. Whereas a lot of mines running around frantically looking for old stockpiles to process, we've added 10 plus years to the mine life by utilizing the ore sorting to process a lot of this lower grade material. The ore sorting has, as I mentioned, you can upgrade up to 6 grams per ton. Now that of course comes at a cost to recovery. When you upgrade up to 6 grams per ton, you know that captures 45, almost 50% of the gold. The optimal tends to be upgrading to about 1 to 1.2 grams per ton, and you capture 90% of the gold that way. One of the options that we're looking at with Metz Engineering is agglomeration heap leach. Now we talked about heap leach years ago, but then the ore sorting test work was so positive that the economics were there that we focused mainly on ore sorting. Now with agglomeration heap leach, Metz has advised us that this method of heap leach, where you crush down to 6 mil and then agglomerate with some type of binding material, you're not receiving normal heap leach recoveries like 60, 70%. Now with agglomeration, you can achieve 70 to 80% recoveries off heap leach. So one option might be to ore sort material. If you take let's say 0.6 gram material, you can ore sort, get a 6 gram per ton fraction, accepted portion, that can go through your processing plant. The remainder of the material is still around 0.4 grams per ton, and that can be then heap leached. So that would be, you know, close to utilizing 100% of the material, very little waste. And so that's one option. And those type of studies and those type of optimizations are what we're working on now as part of our PFS test work here moving forward. So some exciting developments happening there. Stay tuned. Now, moving on from Corbel, let's move back to the exploration. Here in the center of the project, we have the Stony prospect area. A number of prospects there. Here, the Stony vein system, the T5 area, Trundle, Tomahawk, and a new discovery, we don't even have a name for it yet, here. And in this area, it's a little bit of a different beast. Not only do we have high-grade gold here, but also high-grade silver and copper. Polymetallic stacked vein systems running through here, almost massive sulfide. And also, we've started to see, as we go back to the multi-element data, antimony showings here as well. So very exciting. Speaking of antimony, let me take you to a new discovery, which is the Stibium prospect. And we're quite excited about this prospect. One reason being that you're right next to the camp. The camp is just here off the screen to the right. So very proximal to the camp. With our Corbel road system going up to Corbel, a short spur will take us straight up to there. And at Stibium, we not only have very good gold, up to 12.7 grams per ton, but this is where we really started seeing the antimony. At the antimony there, I remember when the team called me and said, you know, Chris, I think we have some antimony here. And so antimony, what's the big deal? We have a lot of elements. But they said to me, no, you don't understand. There's massive stibnite veins out here. Massive stibnite veins. Stibnite, of course, being the primary ore source for antimony. And you can see from these results, 60.5% antimony, 2.1% antimony. Again, when you have 0.1% antimony, that provides significant byproduct credits to a gold deposit. Once you get into that 1% and above, now you're talking about a co-product, and potentially a standalone antimony mine if you didn't have any gold. You didn't have any gold there. So the exciting thing about this with the antimony is that it's not a diversion. I want to make it very clear. It is not a diversion of our normal operating business looking for gold. We're a gold company. The antimony is coincident with the gold. It's in with the gold. So as part of our normal course of work, if we see the antimony, we will be focused on that as well for those byproduct credits. Moving on to another antimony new discovery here at Styx. The gold, okay, it's very anomalous gold. No high grade, super high grade there yet, but look at the antimony. 19%, 21%. What we've seen here is more massive stibnite veining all over in this area. So definitely an area to follow up. And let's talk a bit more in depth about the antimony. So I'm a gold, silver, copper guy. And so when the antimony came up, I was like, okay, antimony, you know, I've dabbled in other things, but never antimony. And we've done a lot of research in over the past few months. And antimony is one of the most strategic and critical elements known to man, for those that don't know. It's heat and flame resistant, anti-corrosive. It's used to harden materials. Your iPhone, your iPad, why doesn't the glass scratch so easy? That's antimony is a key component in that. So it's used in so many civilian applications. The battery, long-term storage battery. So one of the leading long-term storage battery technologies are liquid metal batteries, antimony calcium batteries. And the leader in that, and with those batteries, is a company called Ambry, which is Bill Gates and crew, and they are the leaders in the liquid metal battery. So there's that. Then I mentioned strategic. What do I mean by that? It's used in many defense applications. All the munitions, this is kind of a bittersweet part of the demand component, but all the munitions, your javelins, your 155 mil artillery shells, the HIMARS, all these things you might have heard about, all of these use antimony. It hardens the lead, and all the munitions use it. A number of other military applications, the glass in the night vision goggles. So the important thing here, opportunity for Nova, is that there's no U.S. domestic supply of antimony. 70% comes from China, 20% from Russia, and then a few smaller players like Burma, Myanmar, which produces about 5%. However, they have a moratorium now on their all their mining, so they're not producing it anymore. So this is a supply chain issue for the U.S., and there's opportunities for potential Department of Energy and Department of Defense grants, and we are pursuing that. Certainly, there's a lot of money in grants being handed out now to various mining companies to secure the supply chains for all kinds of critical metals, and antimony is one of the big ones on that list. The market is growing at 4% a year for antimony. It's expected to reach $4.5 billion by 2032. And so that's obviously presents a great opportunity for Nova. It's coincident with the gold, and we intend to pursue all this. Our global growth, our resource story, we started with 2.5 million ounces in a maiden resource at Corbel 4 short years ago. And since that time, we've defined almost 10 million ounces in 4 short years. Now, we understand and we get it. It's not just about the quantity of your resources, it's the quality of your resources as well. And so our main objective over the last couple of years, certainly this year, has been to start proving up these resources into those higher confidence measured and indicated categories at the site. And with that work, that further drilling, of course, there'll be a secondary bonus, we feel, of further resource growth. Upcoming catalysts. We've gone through some of them. Watch the news flow. There'll be further discoveries reported from the 2023 exploration programs. The drill results will be forthcoming shortly from the drilling we did this year at RPM North and RPM Valley, those black traces we were looking at in the previous slides. The U.S. listing is progressing, the ADR, to list in the U.S. here on one of the big boards. This is so important. We believe it'll be a catalyst. If you look at some of our peers in this space, our direct neighbor, U.S. Gold Mining Inc., listed on the NASDAQ, as well as one of the highest profile intrusive related gold system plays recently here. Snowline Resources, also listed in North America. They're receiving, they're getting valuations multiples of ours. And so we believe there's an opportunity there, and that is progressing very rapidly now. Also, we're undergoing strategic review as part of our PFS to look for the optimal mine. Be assured, we are looking for the quickest path to production. Be assured of that. And a lot of our PFS studies and trade-off studies that are happening now will determine what that path is and really start to fine-tune that timeline. So that's underway. Here's the value opportunity. We did release our last scoping study earlier this year, 650 million NPV, 11-month payback out of a 17-year mine life. That payback comes from RPM high grade, 360,000 ounces of production in that first year, and then the balance of the mine life of 130,000 ounces, 53% IRR, less than 400 million CapEx, producing almost 2.3 million ounces over that 17 years. Now, we haven't received much love from that scoping study. It's just been a brutal market. We all know it. You would hope that's baked in here at some point. Nevertheless, we keep pushing forward on our path to production. And so our path to production sees us currently with a decision to mine in 2026 and looking to produce late 2027, somewhere around there. Now, we're really on two tracks. There's that path to production, but don't forget, we also have the path of the exciting new exploration discoveries and more resources being defined at some of these prospects we've discussed today. So we'll be moving more resources to measured and indicated, more drilling, ongoing studies and test work, and of course, those exciting exploration discoveries there. One thing I wanted to mention today is our team. You're in good hands here. Our team has a vast experience across all the spectrum and the areas that we need to move this company and this project forward. You got Louis Simmons. Louis is in the civil works side. Louis is a dirt mover. Louis builds things. Multiple. I'm always hearing about another $100 million project in that construction project that that Louis is involved in with his construction business. I think he's built half of Western Sydney by now. So Louis is a dirt mover. Louis, if you think of it in terms of trains, Nova is a freight train that can't be stopped. I might be the conductor of that freight train, but Louis is the actual freight train moving along. So that's what I got to say about Louis. Craig Bentley. Craig has vast commercial and finance experience, senior roles, being Ernst & Young in the past, auditing the likes of Bank of America. He's been so critical and involved with all of our capital raisings, working on the ADR and the U.S. listing. He's our compliance guy. Have you noticed that a lot of our ASX releases, he works very closely with the ASX. There's no hangups in any of our ASX releases. Very compliant. They're going right through. So thank you for that, Craig. Rodrigo, mining engineer, so critical now that we're moving into the advanced stage, looking at mine optimizations. Rodrigo's critical with Evolution Mining, was right-hand man over there, instrumental in the Red Lake acquisition and turnover and turnaround of that project for Evolution Mining. Avi Geller, who's on the call today, that's our finance guy in New York. This is how we tap into the big money with Avi there in New York. Hans Hoffman, this is our head of exploration. I can't say enough accolades about Hans. Hans has the most experience on this project on the ground than any of us. He was involved in the early days with some of the other companies that were scouting around out there, Tech Minco, Millrock. He knows where all the mineralization was. We used Hans on a campaign style through the years to do our exploration. Now he's come earlier this year. He came on board full-time as our exploration manager. He knows, and he's honed us in and taken us to all the areas that he recalls that previous companies have defined mineralization, which is why we've had such a rapid discovery rate due to Hans's work. And then perhaps most importantly, the image you see in the background, that's the team. Those are the guys, that's the guys and gals that do the actual work on the ground. These are heavy duty, hardcore Alaskans. I understand sometimes when you talk to the Australian shareholders, you see some snow, you see some mountains. A lot of people can't freak out a bit. I assure you, these guys live and breathe this stuff. That's our team. So proud of them. Many of them have been with us since the very beginning, most of them actually, and the team is growing. And so that's our team in the background. You're in good hands with them. Remember that management and directors have personally invested over $5 million in this. We have skin in the game as well. So concerns like dilution and these type of things, we understand that. It affects us as well. Our main objective is to develop this project, bring it into production as fast as possible to minimize dilution and for us all to reap the gains. And so there's big story, whirlwind tour. I implore you to go to our website. You'll find all this content and more, dig a bit deeper. And I think you'll find that there's, we're onto something very special here, and there's near, maybe the gold market is turning now with these gold prices, but there's near, medium, and long-term opportunity here for the investor with Nova Minerals. And with that thought, I thank you for that today.